So, right, thank you, Mrs. So she tells me recording is now in progress. So, so welcome everybody to Indie Authors Cafe and we've moved it a week earlier than we usually have as well, which probably confused people because next Sunday is my birthday, and I decided that I wasn't going to be doing stuff on my birthday. The
Wi-Fi's went up.
Wi-Fi, yeah, we'll see. Just fingers crossed. Somebody else was unmuted. That was, I could hear some voice in the background. So we're going to, hopefully, if the Wi-Fi stays and we manage to keep enough connection, we're going to have a little bit of a chat today with Sinclair about his books. And people have said, "Oh, congratulations on your new book," because I used the picture of Soul Seeker. That's actually been out for a little while now. Try to see when was this published? 2012 that book came out. So here we have the collection of Sinclair's books. There we are, the eight books that are out just now, and this was the very first. The Reluctant Detective was where it all began, and then we went through to the, what was that? We've got The Good Girl, Killer Performer. This one is actually very local to our home now, The Island Murder, which is set in Millport, which we can see for the house. And then we have second series of Soul Seeker, Inheritance, Harley Quinn, and that's not the right cut. That's the old cover for Grave Consequences.
I don't know what the new one is.
I don't know, actually I was looking in the bookcase because
I mustn't get lost in the move.
I know, that's what I was looking for, I couldn't find it, because we actually just been up in our office up in Bishopbriggs the other day, and we're packing up to close down the office, so that we've actually moved everything else now down to Largs. So we're going to have a little chat this afternoon about crime and writing crime fiction, and then we've got a couple of questions for you guys, and then we'll break out into some groups for a chance to kind of get to talk to some other writers. If you've got questions, if you've got a question for Sinclair that you want to ask him whilst we're chatting, then you can put it into the chat facility, and we can also maybe have some time to open the mics up a little bit later on. So I wanted to start by asking you then, what makes a good crime novel? What in your opinion, Sinclair, makes it
subjective, isn't it?
Yeah.
It depends what kind of crime you like to read. I mean, there's a big spectrum from cosy crime, historical crime, contemporary crime, classic crime. I mean, there's no set answer to that, I don't think. So
what's your favourite?
My favourite, and always will be, is, and I think a lot of people know, is Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett and the classic American crime fiction of the 30s and 40s.
And what you've tried to do, I suppose, is bring that sort of
boxes popping up.
That sort of era into modern day, and that's where you started with The Reluctant Detective.
I wouldn't say that. What I would say is that I just tried to imagine what would a private eye in Glasgow be like in the 21st century. That's how I thought about it. But I mean, it was still the private eye obviously was the main driver for that initially anyway. So, and I suppose, so there's maybe some people in here who didn't even realise that you wrote books. Because if you've known us through the publishing world, and Sinclair has been very busy really working on, he's the man that makes all the everybody else's books kind of come to life, creating covers and designing the interior and creating their ebooks. So tell us then, I suppose, about The Reluctant Detective, and who is The Reluctant Detective? Reluctant Detective is Craig Campbell. At the start of the books, he's 29 and he's an ex-insurance investigator who gets tired of the corporate world and decides to go out on his own. And in The Reluctant Detective, he's asked to investigate a murder, having never done so before.
Yep.
Never thought you ever would.
Yeah, but gets pulled into more of that scene than he's insurance investigating.
Yeah.
So we start off in Glasgow with the reluctant detective, and I suppose that's part of a good, I suppose any good book, but in terms of crime, your setting and your characters, as well as your story, are all going to come together really to create.
That should have been in any book. We've been talking a lot about this in the Wednesday class, and we've been saying that the importance of those three things, because those are the things that draw people in and engage people. The characters need to be believable. The setting needs to be relatable, unless you're writing something for fantasy fiction or science fiction, something like that. But it's still, even at that, it still needs to be relatable. And obviously, I personally think a story is really important, but I know that's not the view of everybody, but I personally think it is.
Yeah. So how, for crime then, because you've not, as far as I know, and we've been married for 33 years, you've not committed any crime yourself.
Been arrested, but never committed any crime.
Yep, and that's another story, folks. But yeah, so if how do you come up with the ideas then to when you're talking about crime? Because in most crime books, you've got some really grisly things. Certainly, some of your books, there's some really grisly things come out of there.
The two most powerful words in the English language are "what if," and that for anyone writing fiction, that should be your starting point. What if? And for crime in particular, so with me, it did start with what if there was a Glaswegian private detective. So that's where it started. But every book starts with a what if. Soul Seeker, what if there was a serial killer in Glasgow? What would the motivation be? So anybody writing fiction, the two most powerful words are what if.
And then and then something comes along. Then what if that happens, and that leads you to what if that happens, and you can then expand your story.
You can get your what if from anywhere. You can get inspiration for that from anywhere. You might be watching something on television, and you think, well, what if they went in that direction and went, completely opposite of what they've done on television? So you've then got a premise that's completely different, and you can start on that.
Mm-hmm.
And that I've done what if a body was found there.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing when you're married to somebody that writes crime, and you happen to be you could be driving along somewhere, and they'll suddenly look and go, that might be a good place for a body, or so.
In Soul Seeker, there's a building used that's an old derelict building in Springburn, and I just thought, what if a body was found there? What would be the motivation? Why would it have been left there? And these kind of things. So so your what if can come from anywhere. It doesn't even come from deep inside you. It can be something else that sparks it.
Yeah. And if you've seen other, reports of, like crimes or things that have come up, how much of that do you think you can pay attention to other stories? Or?
I'm not conscious of it so much. I know that Ian Rankin does. I know that every book that Ian Rankin does, he takes crime stories, real life crime stories, and he knits a completely different narrative with it. One of his books was based on Willie McRae's murder back in the 70s, for example. So you can find your inspiration anywhere, and it's just whatever you choose. Personally, I always find that it can be. It's a lot of the time it's like watching television or seeing a film and thinking, what if they'd gone in a completely different direction with that?
Yeah, and that starts the grey matter going then to kind of lead you in a road.
And when you're in that place, then it sometimes won't shut up. You'll hear it. It'll be there in the middle of the night, and it'll be saying what if, and you can go away. I want to sleep.
So the Reluctant Detective, you had, the first book, The Good Girl, was then the second one, which was this. And that sort of moved a bit further then out of Glasgow and up towards St Andrews.
So St Andrews and Dundee,
yeah. And so that was the books that you actually went and did a little bit of reconnaissance then in Dundee in particular.
I was very fortunate that at the time it was still Tayside Police, and their mortuary agreed to let me have a tour, and I sat down with one of the pathologists and had a lot of time with them, and they explained a lot of procedures, which was hugely helpful for what I was doing.
Yeah, so when you're asking, what happens to a body when it's been in the water for a long time and things like this. Yeah,
I also got help from Professor Black at Dundee University, who is one of the leading forensic anthropologists. So she deals with mainly starting from just bones, and she was kind enough to offer me some help as well.
Yeah, because there was a TV sort of program that she was involved, talking about lots of that. So that, I suppose, that is the thing about the research then, that you're looking sometimes at the physical places, if where you're setting your story, but also really trying to understand what goes on to make it believable. Is that really what you're aiming for when you're?
It became more important for the second series because it was police procedural, so I was fortunate to spend some time with a policeman who basically served at every level as a detective, including counter-terrorism and sex crimes, and he had done everything, and he was really good and helped me with try and hone down a lot of the detail. Under Scottish law, when the body's moved, it must be accompanied by 2 police officers. There must be 2 pathologists attending a post-mortem when there is a suspicious death. So, there's lots of this stuff that is completely different from what you would see in, like Vera or one of these English television programs. It's a completely different system we use. So it was important to know that.
So, because that's you've always wanted to kind of have some sort of, I suppose, some sort of factual stuff to hang the story on as well. So
the truth of a murder investigation in Scotland, there will be 40 detectives led by a chief superintendent, and there's no one person who will solve that crime. But you can't do that in fiction, because you can't possibly make 40 people that are going to be engaging and relatable, and so you have to create your characters that take that on. That's the same for anybody who writes police procedural stuff. Like Vera is complete fiction, but she is so engaging. She's the reason you want to watch the program and read the books.
Yeah. So that's the thing for you. I mean, how much of would you say, how important is it for you the character, that the characters are built up in your books?
Right. What I decided to do was to try and make both Craig Campbell and Russell and Menzies, all 3 of those people that weren't failing, hadn't failed marriages and were constantly drinking. I mean, Craig's only vice was his coffee. I think I must have, if Nespresso had been about when it first came out, I sold lots of coffee machines from Nespresso. I wanted that to try and, because every single detective, every single one has either a failed marriage, is a hopeless parent, is drinking too much, or whatever it might be. And that's just obviously no real. That's not how I'm sure there are detectives out there who struggle with all these things, but I think the vast majority of them will probably be, happily in a relationship, decent parents, all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to try and change that a wee bit.
Mm-hmm. And not have that just stereotypical stuff that makes TV. I suppose that's what it is, isn't it? When you look at the TV,
it's
extreme characters.
Drama is built from that, but the challenge was to try and build drama without that. To actually make the criminals be a bit more interesting. I think, I hope anyway, that every one of the books I've written, that the person who actually commits the murder has an interest and motivation that you can almost sympathise with sometimes. So
yeah. And I suppose so that leads into the, you know, how many ways can you murder somebody?
oh well, I've not found a limit to that yet.
There you go again. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you're living with somebody that said, yeah, I've just thought a really interesting way to kill somebody. Right, should I be concerned?
But the challenge with the Soul Seeker was that under, you know, if you look at any of the FBI stuff, or the definitions of what a serial killer is, the vast majority of them have an MO, you know, a unique MO that they will repeat. Sometimes it accelerates, but it will basically still be the same MO. And what I had, the challenge with Soul Seeker was because he was off, without the spoilers, because he was looking for where the human soul was, there had to be different ways for him to then try and kill somebody. So
yeah, because so if we kind of take people through kind of chronologically your books for those that don't know. So you had, you know, we had The Reluctant Detective, which was the very, very first one that we started off with. Then we went to The Good Girl, which was set up in St Andrews in Dundee. And that one is actually the where you've got the people from the different kind of countries working in the
yeah.
Yeah, and then we've got The Killer Performer,
yeah,
which is set in the music scene.
If you want to go sort of through the what ifs, right? The what if of the Good Girl was when we had the caravan up in St Andrews, you could see on the farms that there were old caravans that Eastern European people were coming to work and were living in these caravans, and that combined with a body being found up on Ardrossan Beach, a dismembered body up on Ardrossan Beach, around about the same time, in Ardrossan Beach, Arbroath, up near Arbroath. So that was the what if there. You know, if you combine those two things, what if?
Yep. And then Killer Performer.
Killer Performer was just an excuse to write about a fictional band, really.
that was a combination of two of your passions then, you know. The stuff and music and being able to pull together. We had great fun with the book launch for this and the kind of merchandise and stuff that we did. So that was the book launch that we did with John Fratelli. That's what you got.
Wait a wee minute. I don't know what's going on with this computer today.
Yeah. Well, Carolyn's currently in a caravan. Carolyn's currently in St Andrews, wishing that she had the good girl to read with me. Well, you can download it in Kindle, I suppose. And if you happen to be in Kinkelbraes or the one up the top of the hill, that's where our caravan used to be. We used to, I don't think the shop's there anymore, but we used to be some of Sinclair's books sold in the shop. So that was it. So yeah, The Killer Performer was the one we actually did so that was about the music world and the band and the band, and we did the book launch in the what's it called? Goodness me. Sloan's, yes. I told you the noise was. If you hear the noise in the background, the dog is dreaming and over in the corner. And John Fratelli played for us, and we did a fundraiser for that, which was really good. She's now growling. Then after that, there was the Island Murder. Now the Island Murder was a little bit different.
Yeah, because that was my tip of the hat to Agatha Christie. It was a locked room murder from a slight difference in that it was just people couldn't go off the island, so it was a wee bit different. But that was an interesting challenge because that's the only one I didn't know who had done it, and I came to the reveal and I had 6 possible suspects, and I couldn't quite decide which one I was going to do. So that was different. That's the only time I've not known who did it. So
you've always got this. Knowing who your killer is, what their motivation is, and what the
that for me is the murder and who did it. It's it's the 250 pages in between that's the problem.
Yeah, joining the dots to kind of get all that going. So those were the Reluctant Detective series. That was, that's with Craig Campbell and him, still bit private eye, kind of doing all this work. And then you had Soul Seeker. So that was when we got to here, and that was then the shift then.
Yeah, because it was a serial killer, it couldn't be done by a private detective. So, and what I did was I spun off this is a long part of the story, but originally I had envisaged that Craig had a contact within the police, excuse me, who was a friend of his from university. And someone suggested to me, why don't you make it an ex-girlfriend? So Alex went from being a man to a woman, so very quickly. And she then she really is, although it's called Russell and Menzies, she is the main sort of driving force of the ideas. You'll find that Alex is normally the one that comes up with the possible solutions as to who did it and why.
And it is Alex Menzies. Tom Russell.
And Tom Russell. Russell's just quite a staid but very decent man. So it just felt like a good combination. I think it does work quite well.
So that was where you then moved to a serial killer. Like you said, you couldn't have a private eye investigating a serial killer because you had to then go for into the kind of police procedural. And this is a lot grittier.
Well, I think it probably is the darkest of the lot.
I don't know. There's some of the Harley Quinn gets a bit gruesome, So. So you've got Soul Seeker then, and you've got this move into
Unfortunately, these books sold better in America than the first ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So why do you think that is? What is it you think?
I think possibly because it is more urban. I think there is Americans quite enjoy British procedural style books anyway, but I think the market prefers things a bit darker.
So, and you really got to unleash your dark side when you were writing Soul Seeker, and then Harley Quinn, because Harley Quinn, which was the next one.
No, Inheritance was the next one.
Oh, sorry, Inheritance is the next one. Yeah, sorry, I've got them in the wrong. That's what's going up. So Inheritance was the next one.
Yeah,
and that was set quite close to our old home, I suppose.
Yeah. At the start, Bardowie Loch.
Bardowie Loch. There's a body found in Bardowie Loch.
This was to have a kind of gang related story, but it turns out that the crimes weren't being committed because of that. That was just, again, I've tried to do something a wee bit different with each of them, and this was, to dip into that gang world that Craig kind of very briefly touches in one of the books, and one of the characters comes back in Inheritance. So I think Inheritance, from a purely writing point of view, I think Inheritance is maybe the best. I think Soul Seeker is probably the best story, but I think in terms of how it's written, I'm happier with Inheritance.
So, and for those that are here and writers that are here, I mean, you will see, you're always going to you're always going to develop your writing. And if you go back and you look at, the very first The Reluctant Detective now, you wouldn't write it in the same way. You would probably change things now if you were going back to rewrite that story.
And it would probably be longer than it was as well.
So that's it. So take heart, everybody who's here, if they're kind of going, they're still in that developmental stage, because it does take time to develop your.
I'm pretty sure the first place Shakespeare wrote was pretty as good as his last few years.
Yeah, so that's it. Just keep going. And then Harley Quinn. So Harley Quinn was written as small three parts, really, wasn't it?
It was an attempt to try something different, but this story stretches over 30 years, and I think it works quite well, actually. I think it was interesting trying to do it in 3 different parts, because you've got to have 3 different endings, obviously, but you still don't know who the killer is until the very last one. So,
yeah. So
and yes, rather gruesome. Just sure,
yeah, it was rather gruesome. Yeah, so that's what he's saying. You think this mild-mannered, nice man, and he comes up with all these horrible, gruesome ways to kill somebody. So is that the dark side of you really being unleashed?
I think so. It's something you're trying to make an entertainment. That's what you're trying to do. So what provokes a reaction sometimes, and certainly in the Harley Quinn there are some very extreme reactions. I mean, right at the start, particularly the battle on top of the university roof, and everybody was like, "Oh, it's a horror story almost." You know?
Yeah. There's lots of gruesome stuff that happens in the Harley Quinn, and then the last novel that you finished with. So we're going to have a little dig at him to keep going, write some more stuff. Was Grave Consequences.
Yeah.
And so what inspired this? And maybe actually just hold up the picture, because that will actually help to.
Yeah, because that place kind of inspired it really. I thought it would be, again, what if there was a body found on top of a grave in the necropolis in Glasgow? So that was the starting point for that. And this is more it's in some ways a love story. I know a lot of folk won't agree, but it is a kind of love story.
So, and that picture that's there is the grave that was inspired you because of was that the place where the flowers were placed?
Every time I've been up there, there's fresh flowers being held by that angel. So I don't know who does it, but somebody puts fresh flowers in their hands.
So it's that kind of what if that? So maybe I should be afraid. Says David Macleod. Yeah, maybe I should. Yeah. So the books have evolved. Your writing has definitely evolved, and we were talking there about your audience. So people in the States, people in the UK, and this is things that there's a lot of people watching here who might not know that. You have all of your books have at least 4-star reviews, and a lot of reviews there are. And I went back and looked because we're probably, it's a bit like the cobbler who's they're wearing shoes or never have any soles on them because we're so busy working with all you lovely writers out there and doing your books that we haven't really kind of spent much time doing promotions or you even go back and write and stuff. And I went back recently because we were decided that you were going to be our guest this time and looked at the reviews that are sitting there. And, people are, not everybody loves it. And please see this as everybody else. Not everybody's not always going to love your book. There's always going to be people who say, no, it's not quite for me. But you have a lot of fans who have, and some really like Craig Campbell because he's a different, younger, different kind of style like the Private Eye, and then I think
he leans slightly more towards the cosy crime in some ways. I mean, there's still dark bits, but it's slightly more. So I think there are more. My senior ladies club. I had when I was writing Craig's stuff, I did get quite a few letters and emails from older ladies who wanted to mother him. So. So it was quite interesting.
Yep. And like you said, you've had, the reviews of people saying, oh, these should be a film, this should be a TV series. People really loving it.
Anybody's yes, please.
Yeah, we're ready to talk. If there's any kind of out there in TV land was looking for a new detective, or and I had wanted to. We used to laugh about who we would cast in the role of Craig Campbell, and so I don't know, because David Tennant's now a wee bit old, so he's kind of had it, and Gerard Butler's too.
But he's getting a bit
James
old.
McAvoy's getting a bit old as well, so yeah. So we need to find.
Maybe they could be Russell.
And Sarah just said that Lynn Anderson once said that crime writers are the nicest group of people you could meet, probably because they get their dark side out in their writing.
Yes. It's quite interesting how many Scots write crime. I mean, it is, you know, the Tartan Noir thing is definitely there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's but you said, is it, you know, there's a bit of the like Scandinavia and the, you know, the Scandi Noir stuff that all came out.
It's the Dark Knights.
Yes, I say we'll live a lot of our lives in the winter in the darkness. So is that, would you think, where some of that the dark nights of the soul then actually get poured into the writing more?
I mean, I think that it's that, but it's also both Scotland and in Scandinavia, there were single books that kind of inspired a lot of people. And for Scottish writers, it's William McAvoy's Laidlaw, because that really, and I don't think anybody will argue, has never ever been bettered in terms of Scottish crime writing, but he was the godfather of it all. You know, he was the one who showed that it was possible to write contemporary crime fiction in Scotland that had a worldwide appeal, and it's absolutely exploded since then. You know, since he done that.
Yeah.
And in Scandinavia, it was a couple whose names escape me in Sweden who started that. And you'll go and see any of the Scandinavian writers will mention these two people as being hugely important. And that's sometimes what it takes. It's just somebody inspirational from your part of the world. You know, somebody that you can relate to.
So maybe it's you, Sinclair, actually, for some of the people who are sitting here watching you just now, you know.
Well,
you know, well, yeah, but and this is the thing. I think we're particularly in Scotland, we're not very good at saying, "Oh, yeah, you know, we're good at something," and kind of patting ourselves on the back for stuff. But you know, here you are, the boy from Postle, right? Who's like, you know, kind of come through and written, you know, some really good stuff.
Sold 150,000 books, so you know, if that's a measure, then yeah, I'm obviously doing something right.
Yeah.
I think I know how to tell the story. I think I know how to write engaging characters, and because they're set in Glasgow has a whole character all of its own that actually makes it easy to write. I mean, I think there would be some places where you would be struggling to find a character to the city, but that's definitely not the case with Glasgow, definitely not.
Yeah. So what's next for you then? You know,
well, there are two still sitting unfinished. There's both a Craig Campbell, which was going to be the big dramatic end to Craig Campbell. And I'll not say exactly how that's going to end, but that's about 12,000 words in, and it's another one sitting at 30,000 words that really needs to get finished. Russell and Menzies. It even has a title and a cover, and just doesn't have a finished book yet.
Okay, so are we? And what advice then would you give to everybody else that's sitting here? Because if you heard somebody else telling you that they had two books that were sitting and they were, yeah, what would you be saying to them?
I would say make the time and write. You can't be a writer if you don't write. But it's sometimes difficult. It really is. At the moment, I don't feel I'm not getting woken up in the night by the what ifs and you know, where I can take these books. So until that happens, I'm not going to be able to finish them, because you can't force it, or you can try and force it, but you're not going to end up with something that's real. Okay,
so the building your creative muscle again, I suppose, is the route then to kind of getting to the point where you can be writing. And I know that you've been inspired by the work that you've been doing with the Creative Writing Club.
Yeah. Hopefully Jim will agree, but I've really enjoyed that. I've enjoyed sort of just sort of explaining some of the tricks that I've picked up, and they are tricks a wee bit. You know, you'll find what we've done in the club is to focus on practical things you can do to take that what if and make it into a book. it's not about high fluting symbology or anything like that. It's about practical things, little practical exercises that can help you to become a better writer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, Stuart saying, yeah, can't force it, like trying to write during lockdown.
Aye.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing for everybody. I mean, the last, year and a half has been, completely mental. We wouldn't have, and even the first lockdown, you wouldn't have thought we were, that we would only have been for a.
I mean, when we started, it was going to be what we thought was 4 or 6 weeks, just having me, and here we are. We've been going now for so long that we're actually going to produce a book at the club. So,
yeah. And for those that are into, don't know anything about the Creative Writing Club, like I said, it's been something that we've run for free. It just started because of lockdown, giving people a kind of creative outlet, and because of that, we're now looking at expanding and doing some more writers events, because we've really tended to concentrate mostly on trying to convince people to get stuff finished and published, but we're now exploring the opportunity of doing some more.
It's something I really want to do. I really have enjoyed working with the group that we've got. I'd like to expand that more. If we could do it down in Largs as a weekend retreat and kind of condense it a wee bit to what some of the stuff we've done, I think that'd work.
Yeah. So so we're looking for. We'll be talking to you shortly about some different things here. I'm just looking at the comments we've got coming up. David said lockdown gave him the time to write, but he needs another lockdown to develop his ideas. We could just lock you in the shed or something, David.
That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, because these practical things help you with this. There are tricks that you can use to help you get that focus, and stuff about how do you structure a chapter. Well, we've done a bit on that in the club, just to say, here are practical things you can do before you even start to sit down to write that chapter, that can give you a structure that can then allow you to write. Because it's always trying to get that balance between the inspiration and not then getting pulled off in different directions, because that, as creative people, that's what happens. And Kim's very guilty of, there's another butterfly. I'm flitting from this one flower to another kind of thing. But when you get there, you've got to try and focus and these were practical tips. These are practical tips that I think will help. I hope will help people, take those ideas and turn them into books.
Yeah. And I just want to say that Carolyn said there she'd definitely recommend it. We took her out of her comfort zone, and it was great to collaborate with other writers. Claire Miller saying, she wrote a novel last year because of the Creative Writing Club. So thank you, Sinclair. And David said Scots and Largs is a nice venue for coffee and meetings. Yeah, we've been in Scots. Yeah. And that's one of the things we are doing just now. We are looking at venues to maybe do some potentially some writers retreat type things where you get the time just to come and you spend, we're thinking maybe over like a kind of a weekend, maybe 2 or 3 nights, get a chance to come and stay, not necessarily with us, but like in Largs, and just so that we've got dedicated time, a bit of teaching time, a bit of writing time, a bit of social stuff, and trying to kind of make that into something that we'll see if people would enjoy and get something out of. Helen said maybe that's the next book, a book around the creative writing group. Well, the creative writing group have got a book of sort of novellas coming out from short stories.
Yeah, we're getting very close.
Getting very close to putting out some work from them. So we do want to just expand what we've been doing with the creative writing stuff online and creating some physical events and stuff around about that, because it's been good fun. Jim's saying, as a non-book writer, there we go. You need we'll blast that out of the water right away.
We need to change that thinking, Jim.
Said, I have been able to go to writing a novel with the indie writers from point zero and learned an immense amount. So that's great. It's just fabulous. And that's the thing, is that everybody can be creative and everybody can develop. And I know that you had some not so pleasant experiences of being in a writing club before.
Aye. Too many navel gazers who were too busy criticising everybody else. It was not for me. It's not what indie authors are about. It's definitely not what we think. It's how everybody's capable of doing it with help and encouragement. Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that hopefully that's what we've done straight when we're working with you on your publishing stuff, is helping to build your beliefs, helping build up your experience and getting to know more about how you get your book out there in the world. But if you're in the writing stuff as well, just kind of starting and just getting to support one another. And that's the bit that we've always loved. We've always loved, having our community around us. Because you guys,
we've missed real life. That's, I think, been the toughest part of lockdown for us, is that nobody really go one Sunday a month and see folk and just have that social time together.
Yeah. So if anybody's got any questions, Helen saying that she means there's an opportunity for us to write a book on practical tips on how to write a book. Yeah, maybe.
Possibly there is.
I know people keep telling me that we should do stuff on that, and it's always, I know we should. It's always that, we should. But there's lots of, like I say, there's always something else to occupy, something else to interest us. So, Stuart, how fine is the line between crime and horror?
I think horror should go even darker and be a bit more outlandish, I suppose. But yeah, there is a fine line. I mean, if you look at what Stephen King does, Stephen King very often he's sort of snaking his way through, between crime and horror. So,
yeah.
And did you see the quote that he put up on Facebook that Stephen King had said? That when you're a writer, you've got to go and shake your ass sometimes. If Stephen King thinks he's got to shake his ass to sell some books, everybody has to shake their ass.
Bend over, so let me see you shake your tail feathers. I'll maybe not do that just now, just not in the camera.
No.
There's a lot to shake since lockdown. Just we've got a few other things. So what else is? And Val McDermott. Just a second, Claire, I'll come back to you just reading this stuff. So Val McDermott goes into the investigation. Karen Slaughter's books are frightening. Yeah, they are. I've read a couple of Karen Slaughter stuff. Joyce, what about a mentorship programme, pairing up new writers with an experienced writer? Okay. As a Shetlander, getting to a weekend workshop as a 14-hour, I appreciate that. 14-hour ferry journey and then a long drive is keeping things possible for us in remote and rural Scotland. So, mentorship idea is something we had talked about that a while ago. So, that may well be there. Something we'll consider. And I've got a wee question for you that actually ties in what you've said there about kind of online versus physical stuff. Claire, were you wanting to?
I would like to ask Sinclair, if you're a writer and your experience of life happens to be kind of limited in some areas, for example, I didn't marry or have a family, and I always guessed that whoever was writing Taggart never had married or had a family, because most of the characters in it didn't have, but they maybe weren't able to have children, or Taggart's wife, when she had a child, she became disabled. There was a gay character. It turned out that there was actually a gay man, and gay people at that time couldn't get married or have families. So what do you do in that sense about developing your own characters if it's an area of life that you've not got much experience of? How would you bring that into the novel, the crime novel, if you wanted maybe characters to be married or whatever?
I think I mean, I don't know what it is to be a detective, you know, so
Yeah.
I've got to use my imagination and I've got to do research, and that's what a writer is. I mean, that we can't possibly, you know, it's like the guys who write science fiction, you know, some of them know nothing about science, but they still write science fiction. So, you know, it's important you go out there and try and research it, and you use your imagination. No, that's the combination. That's the two things, and it's how much reality do you need, and how much imagination. That's the balance, and that's certainly the balance that I've tried to keep it as real as possible, but understanding, as I said earlier, you can't possibly write 40 characters that people are going to be interested in. So you've got to condense that into a couple of people.
Yeah. So Pam's asked a question, Sinclair, about what murder mystery writers are you influenced by, and who do you like to read?
It's quite a broad spectrum. I like, as I said earlier, I mean, Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, and Ross MacDonald in particular were my favourites, have been my favourites since I was 13 years old. Ian Rankin, obviously, is hugely important in Scottish crime writing. William McIlvanney, as I said, is the great Scottish crime writer of all time, and maybe always will be. I don't know, but it's certainly possible. I like Val McDermott, but hers can get a bit dense sometimes. I quite like a story that ticks along quickly. So Ian Rankin's up there. Scandinavia, Joe Nesbo, for example. Michael Connelly for the States, I like his stuff. So there's loads of different ones.
So, and Stuart just saying how some writers write in different genres. You know, just what have you thought about any other writing in any other genre?
Well, there's a fantasy novel that's sitting with 15,000 words. So yes, I have. Because I mean, fantasy and science fiction is the other thing I read. So they're the other things I enjoy writing. But I've had so many ideas down through the years that I didn't finish. It includes, and I still think it's quite a good idea. I had kind of science fiction / fantasy story set in the near future, all based on the lyrics of Bob Dylan's "The Hard Rain's Gonna Fall," which is quite a. If you go and it's a very poetic song. If you go and read it, it's got some interesting lines in it. So I was trying to build a story around that, and I started that, and that's about 8,000 words long. So there's lots of different things that I've tried that didn't get finished until The Reluctant Detective.
So, so what advice would you give to people that are watching just now if they are around reading? Because I think that was one of the stuff that we've spoken a lot about. Just if you're reading different genres and reading different books, and how that can help you.
You cannot write if you don't read. You cannot write if you don't read. It's just not possible. So read as much as you can and try different things. I mean, I relatively recently started reading historical crime, which I'd never done before, but I really enjoy that. And there's things in there that I can see and use that are, it comes from a different place, but you can still use it. You can be inspired by anybody, and it always gives you that opportunity to do your own what if on a story. And it might be you go completely 180 degrees in an opposite direction, or you go a complete tangent, but it gives you an opportunity for what if.
Yeah. So that thing about just get out and read. And I mean, we've had people who have come.
Right. What I would say is read and observe. Always be observant. So if you're sitting on a bus, take note of people around about you. You'll make conversations that are just in. We kind of done a wee exercise on this to come up with an imaginary conversation on a bus, because you sometimes go into a bus and you come into the middle of a conversation and you think, what in the name of God are they talking about? And it's just be observant. Just be observant. That's where characters come from. That's where situations come from. If you're observant, you can write a good setting. be aware of what you see, what you hear, what you smell, everything, just stuff like that.
And Helen said, what suggestions would you give to someone who has lots of ideas, lots of what ifs, but never dives deep with any of them?
Well, start by just writing out a synopsis. That doesn't need a deep dive, but it could be as simple as such and such does such and such, which ends up on such and such. There's your synopsis, and you've got a starting point. And a lot of what we've done with the Writing Club is about taking those as building blocks, like being able to find building blocks to expand on that. So if you start with something as simple as a 25-word synopsis, you've got to start. And then it's only a matter of building from there. There's a lot of work. Novel, it doesn't just happen, but you've at least got to start. Write it down. Don't leave it in your head. That's one thing I must say. Don't leave it in your head.
So, yeah. David says, listen to people shouting conversations on mobiles in public and very loud.
That's right. Because you're only getting one half of the conversation. Very interesting. Talking about. And then you go, it might not be what they're talking about, but you go, what if this is what they were talking about? And then you've got a story. Carolyn's contribution to the book is about a text conversation that starts inadvertently. And I'm going to say, I absolutely love what Carolyn's done, and I hope everybody loves it when we get the book out. So what we were saying to you though, be nosy. So no, that wasn't what I was saying. Be observant's not quite the same as be nosy, but
so that doesn't give me excuses to look in folks' windows when it's dark. You can leave the curtains open. No, okay, right. And the problem is, you can tell why I'm not as much a writer, because you have to then be quiet and listen to what else is going on. Whereas I'll just find somebody else to blether if I was sitting on the bus. So that whereas I would just observe and kind of take it on and then go away and write something. I'm too busy finding out somebody's life story that I'm sitting beside. So that's how we're different.
Yeah, aye.
So I think we're going to wrap up. We've been longer than we would normally be doing this section, but it's been really good. It's been good just to kind of delve into some of your stories. Hopefully, we'll all be going, right, Sinclair, get one of those, right? Get your creative juices flowing, get out there and do some stuff. Hopefully, now that you've had needles stuck in you, you're starting to feel your health's a bit better again.
I'm going to feel a bit tired now, but
yeah. So and kind of getting things moving again would be great. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for doing that. That's been great. We will.
I had a choice.
We didn't have a choice. So you're my guest, and really because we were talking about. There's a lot of stuff happens for crime in September. I mean, you've got the whole bloody Scotland crime festival that usually, and I don't know if they're doing, I think they're doing some things live in Stirling this year, but a lot of it's still online. And so our idea was to do a few others, like smaller, can probably still be online talks to some people during September, just to kind of wet your whistles on more crime stuff.
One thing I forgot to say just about Helen's question. Ian Rankin has said that he has had, how many books has he got? About 30 books now. So he's had 30 great ideas and he's never wanted a great book. His words, no mine, his words. But he always takes those ideas and turn them into a book. So you'll never write the perfect book, so just bloody write.
Bloody write it, there we go, that's it. Bloody Scotland, bloody write it. So thank you. I'm just going to stop the recording and then I'm going to